I'm Aryeh Schwartz alongside Rachel Galligan, and welcome to the Winsidr Show, where it's all about the W. Shake, shake, shaking up in the WNBA. If you like our show, please consider joining our Patreon community, patreon.com/Winsidr. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. And don't forget to see our amazing staff's written content over at winsidr.com. Welcome back to the show. Very excited to be here. As a reminder, we are still sifting through the many applications that we got to of sharing your favorite WNBA moment. We will be picking a winner very soon. We've whittled it down to the 5 finalists. We're going to do a whole episode with that. We'll get into that later. But news has been cracking out daily, it feels like almost, Rachel. We got Kurt Miller to the Dallas Wings as the GM. We got Katie Smith just announced today, right before recording this. She's moving over as an assistant for the Ohio State. Claire, who has been the GM for Minnesota, is moving to join Unrivaled. We also have what else has happened, Rachel, since the end of the season?
Tyler Marsh took over at Chicago Sky.
Boom. What do we get any coaches? I'm trying to blank if we got a new coach on any of the teams.
Like Las Vegas Aces, she hired. She announced a hire. I forget who she hired though.
Steph White over to Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
Golden State got their head coach. Blanking on her name right now, the assistant from Vegas.
Natalie.
Why can't I think of her name? Basically, Vegas's assistant coaches have been cleared out. And now they're adding in some new coaches. They brought someone in from the NBA side who's now going to join. An exciting time. You have the name? I'm blanking.
It's Natalie. Is
it
Nick Case? Nick Case?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, look, things are shaking up. Things are moving in the W. There's a lot to react to, a lot to think about. There's been all these discussions of who should be GM. I mean, we can go anywhere we want to about this. I guess with Indiana, look, here's my thing. Let me just do my soapbox rant real quick, and then we can discuss all these things, because I've been wanting to do this episode for a while now. I think a fear that I have in the growth of the W is, first of all, there has been a precedent set that coaches who have experience in the NBA are going to get paid more than coaches who have winning experience in the W. Coaches who have not done anything in the NBA, it's literally, oh, you were in the NBA, so we're going to pay you more in the W now. And I get supply demand. I get, they would be paid that much in the NBA, so on and so forth. For me, I'm looking at it and I'm just like, as a W fan, I don't like that. And so far, we have not seen success from those movements, those moments, from people, poaching from the NBA. And I think, look, there's a lot of shade thrown at the staffs and WNBA teams and blah, blah, blah. But there's something to be said. There's a lot of talented people who have been working their tail off, climbing the ranks in WNBA teams for a very long time, with the main goal, the ultimate goal of being a GM or a coach in the W, not the ultimate goal of using the W as a stepping stone to move on to a different league. And so I just hope that teams are doing their due diligence and researching the people who are in the W, who know these players, who know the differences between style of play, coaching styles, and things like that, and can be successful in the W. That's my soapbox. Sorry.
I just think it's an interesting time. You kind of look at supply and demand. There's going to have to be some new names that are being pulled from somewhere. I mean, yeah, you're going to have recycled sounds really, really rough, because I don't like that word, because especially when you've got people that are, at a place for a year, 2 years, being able to have some consistency in part of the WNBA is part of the issue right now. That's part of the issue why they have not been able to attract coaches from other markets, i.e. college coaches, right? And so I think we're at a crossroads now where you're adding more teams. You don't have a lot of front office experience that's around there right now. You really don't. So you've got people in front office with very minimal experience, and the people that even have a couple of years under their belt with maybe a consistent, long-lasting franchise are highly coveted. And then you've got people like, the Kurt Millers of the world or the Trammels of the world who have long coaching resumes, who've coached for a long time. Where do they end up? And Kurt Miller, I think the dilemma was going to be, all right, do I am I ready to step away from the sidelines? And I can guarantee you, and this is without talking to him, I can guarantee you that he had options. Um, it was probably a tough decision at this point of his career to try to figure out, do I step away from the sideline or do I want to just be more in kind of a GM type of role? Going to be interesting to see how that dynamic is with him and Greg Bibb in Dallas. I have to give Bibb a little bit of credit for at least acknowledging that something had to change, or at least create the illusion that something is changing. Because as long as he was in that ownership and GM position, it felt like that franchise was going to be what we've always known that franchise to be,
Going nowhere.
a hot ass mess. But it's like a hot ass mess with potential. That's the craziest part, right? So like outside of him selling it and brand new ownership coming into place, I'm willing to go through this experiment and see how it works. I'm willing to see, okay, can Greg truly take a step back and allow someone like Kurt Miller to make the decisions when it comes to free agency movement? How's that dynamic going to look? I don't know. I have my questions for sure, but nonetheless, I have to give Dallas a little bit of credit for making the switch and at least trying. It's going to be weird not seeing Kurt Miller on the sidelines anywhere. College,
Hmm.
WNBA. That's a hit for our game. And then you have Katie Smith. I mean, that was someone that I think you looked at what the Minnesota Lynx did this year and you thought, okay, um, she's going to get a job if she wants it. She's going to have options, whether it's LA, whether it's Atlanta. I mean, she deserves to have another opportunity at the helm of a WNBA franchise. And obviously, she took a different route, whether maybe it's family at home, maybe she's kind of eyeing the college route, but definitely a little bit of a shocker. I don't think anybody saw that coming. Katie Smith um, going back to her alma mater, Ohio State, but that's a big loss for the WNBA. Then you have Claire. So right now, you've got Minnesota is clearing house, which is
Hmm.
interesting. What does that look like? LA still hasn't hired anybody. And all these things are going to happen really, really soon. I mean, we have the draft lottery in like a couple days.
Oh yeah, Atlanta still. Like yeah,
And it
there's a
completely and
lot.
it completely makes
Connecticut.
sense that the aces would be poached and those assistants would get an opportunity. Sure, that makes sense. But I don't know. Does Olaf get a job somewhere, or does he just want to stay there and be with his wife and coach this Liberty team? So then it's like, who's gonna fill these roles? It just feels really, it's a really strange time right now in terms of what franchises are going to do what it takes to put the money down, to put the stability down, to attract high caliber coaches. However you define what is a high caliber
Hmm.
coach. I mean, we have to step away from the days of making $350,000, on a 2-year contract and thinking you're going to get somebody, that like that. Those days are done. The top franchises in the WNBA are paying, and honestly, that Sandy Brondello should be making more. Cheryl Reeves should be making more. But you've got Phoenix making over $1 million. You've got Becky over at Vegas making over $1 million. I mean, that is now the standard. And we haven't gotten. Have we seen a reporting of what Steph White's making with the
No,
Fever?
but there was claims that she was making around that same mark, and that Chicago offered her the whole boat.
Yeah,
But that's like my second rant, which is, look, we can look at it if you want to view it from a positive perspective, or whatever you want to say, that look, those days are over. You can't pay 300K for a coach anymore. You need to be, shelling out. I completely agree with that.
but who is going to and who's still not going to? I don't know.
Exactly. But on in addition to that is, to me, seeing these coaches firings with Atlanta, with Dallas, with Chicago, whatever happened in Connecticut with Steph White, with LA, to me, and I'm not sitting in on these meetings or whatever. I, when I look at this, it tells me short-sightedness by these teams, a lack of
Yeah,
preparation. When all of a sudden, when you can't, and I've seen article after article that's like, the W is changing, they need better and blah blah blah. And I'm like, yes, we do. That's totally accurate. But it's not like, oh, all of a sudden these teams need to snap their fingers and become respectable franchises that are going to think ahead and plan things out. No, when you are firing a coach after her second year, or after his second year with this team, when you knew what they were getting into with Kurt Miller, right?
exactly.
You were not thinking ahead. When you
Who
bring
wants
these
to
coaches
go?
in,
Who wants to go to the LA Sparks right now? You knew this was a rebuild. Kurt Miller did exactly what he was supposed to do. The front office did exactly what they were supposed to do in terms of getting in the draft picks, being in the lottery. They needed to be in the lottery again. They needed to redefine kind of that chemistry. And from what I could tell, and I'm not in the locker room every day, that team seemed fine in terms of, it wasn't the hot ass mess that it was before when you had Liz Cambage and all that other stuff going on for
wasn't
that. But
Chicago, wasn't Dallas.
yeah, so I mean, like, that's the part where it's like some of these places, it's hard to take seriously. If you're a coach, are you really willing to change up your career or wherever you're currently at to go make a move to a place in, like LA right now that just got rid of somebody for doing exactly what they needed him to do.
Well, also a place that doesn't have facilities,
Right.
right, has not shown investment in their team. So that's the other thing. Like, we can talk about LA. We can talk. Look, there are so many different places in this league right now that the front office, the coaching staff connection with the roster are in disarray. LA, fine. Here's my thing. Like, when it comes to LA and Kurt Miller, we can get into all that in like its own podcast. Obviously, you knew what they were set up to do. And in my perspective, there's maybe a handful of players on this roster that should be on the roster when they're good, AKA this next season or the season following, right? So I'm not concerned about that. So like, there's so much you need to be thinking. Like, a coach's job is to think about today and the season. A GM's job is to think about this season, but also the future of this team. And I just think so many of these franchises, whether it was a nod, nod, wink, wink, nudge, nudge of a situation like, hey, I know we're not competing now. I'm fine with us stumbling for the next few years. And then you can't just stumble for 5 years and then go, now we're going to take it seriously. Now we're going to do good. That's not how it works. You need to build up. It's like creating, educating a child or creating a Lego structure. You need a strong base and then you slowly add and build it up. I mean, Rachel, let's talk about it. Connecticut, Indiana, Atlanta. You can add Minnesota to the list now with the movement we've seen there. Seattle, Dallas, LA. We're talking, and did I mention Chicago? We're talking about a lot of different teams in this league. Some of those teams have had recent success. Some of those teams on an upward trajectory. But at the same time, like Amber Cox, for example, big fan of what she's done. But historically, unless I'm missing something, she's been on the business side of things. And now she's flipping over to the GM side of things. Yes, you're still keeping Lynn around to do some advising and whatnot, but I got my questions on that. And I think that's okay. When you look at Minnesota, are we giving Claire the credit or are we giving Reeve the credit? Which one is it? And now you don't have Claire and you don't have Katie. And the thing I will say about Minnesota specifically is, if Reeve is going to be in these multiple roles and get, GM or executive of the season or whatever, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say she's able to do that because of her coaching staff, because she has the likes of a vet of Katie Smith, Rebecca Brunson on that staff, so she can trust them to do those things. And then you look at some of these other teams. I just have so many questions throughout this whole league. And I think if you're New York, if you're Vegas, even though Vegas's assistants have just been gutted and you lost your GM too. I think you have to be looking, if you're one of the teams that has consistency or continuity of coaching staff, forget roster, just even your coaching staff front office, you have to be sitting there thinking to yourself, okay, we're at least in a better situation than half the league right now. Because let's be real, half the league is going through some major changes.
Uh, well, and I mean, that's just like the statement of the year from top to bottom. If you have consistency in the WNBA right now, that's golden because we're getting ready to have this expansion draft where, half the league's fair game. I mean, and then, we're going to do that 2 more times. I don't know. It just feels like all of these teams, the way we've known, certain franchises to look, everything's different. Everything is going to look completely different. And that's not even taking free agency into consideration. So we are at such a crossroads in the WNBA right now, from top to bottom, whether it's investment in your franchise and making that a place that free agents want to go to that's respected. Their players are done playing, in a practice gym with the YMCA, noon ball squad going on next door to you. Players are done playing in the
Connecticut.
pyramid of Long Beach State. Like this, the precedent has been set to a premium, and the players even rested or even alluded to it. When they opted out, as we all expected them to opt out, of just raising the bar of that expectation. But who's actually going to do it? I mean, I can at least give Chicago Sky the credit because supposedly they've broken ground on a practice facility. We'll see how long that takes. At least, okay, you go out and you get arguably, I would say Tyler Marsh is one of the top names out there for a head coaching position. Now, he's never been a head coach in the WNBA before, but because of where he's coming from and because of that track record of success in Las Vegas and the Becky Hammon coaching tree, I think he deserves a shot. I think it's fair. But again, you already know. Everybody knows. If you're listening to this, God bless you because you've listened to my rants about the Chicago Sky. I don't need to go down that road. But at least Chicago seems like they're trying, right? They're putting their money where their mouth is. They're trying to get the right players. It was very obvious that Teresa Witherspoon was not the direction this franchise needed to go after the 1-year experiment. Probably, was debatable from the start why they even went that direction. But okay, let's see. Let's give them a shot and let's build this practice facility. At least Chicago's trending the right way. I don't know what Connecticut's doing. I don't know what LA's doing. I don't know what Atlanta's doing. I don't know. I just feel like
Rachel, the team we keep forgetting is that I totally spaced on until I was thinking a little bit more while you were talking. DC don't have a GM.
we don't even think about DC because they're not even like a team right now.
Rachel, they don't have a head coach. They don't have a GM. They literally we're also owned by an NBA team. So our NBA GM is just going to take double duty.
Team? I mean, what is going on? I mean, I'm telling you, are we getting ready to hit a point where, yes, we're adding expansion teams? One, are we ready for expansion right now? That's a conversation a lot of people don't want to have, but I'm willing to have it. Are we ready for expansion at the rate that it's happening right now? And are we going to see some places fold at some point because they cannot keep up with the expectation or the Joneses of the WNBA? That's kind of my 5-year projection of are all of these 12 teams stable enough to remain and continue to keep up with the expectation of what is demanded now to be a successful WNBA program? That's going to be the interesting part. But I mean, everything's going to change. These teams are going to change. You're going to have half the teams are going in expansion, half the players going in expansion draft. Free agents are going to places that we didn't used to think as being free agent destinations, but now they are. People used to want to be in LA. People don't want to be in LA right now. That's obvious. So what's LA going to do about that? So I don't know. It's a really interesting time. I think I'm not convinced that we're done seeing some changes in terms of the coaching standpoint. I think that there's a chance that Noelle Quinn could be on the move. Hot take, random, completely far left take. Does Cheryl Reeve make a move? Is someone able to go and approach her with
money?
A sweet deal? I don't know.
Well, because here's the thing that no one wants to talk about is the new ownership in Minnesota that seemingly is going to be taking over has not shown any attention or any love to the Lynx, which I'm sorry, makes absolutely no sense. Only Minnesota sports team to ever win anything. Side note, if Minnesota isn't blowing up Big T, Mike Tebow, to be their GM and maybe even take on an assistant, because he is to set, unless he doesn't want to be part of this anymore. If I have a GM opening, I'm hitting him up. I don't care. I'm offering him the house. He's an elite GM. He knows about player development. He's from Minnesota, so he has that connection. His family's been there too. Look, at the end of the day, we are not done seeing movement. But as you pointed out, the biggest question and the thing that maybe frustrates me the most is we're sitting here and people are trying to push out this narrative that teams are now, diving into the analytics, that teams are more focused on growing and being a better team, and we need to be more serious. We have a lot of teams that don't have a head coach or don't have a GM or have a GM taking over less than a week or 2 weeks before an expansion draft or before the lottery and then before the expansion. What are we talking about? You and I, as media members, as talking heads who are sitting here trying to game plan, think things out, we're sitting here and we're going, it's hard for us to wrap our head around for a variety of situations what these teams are going to do, the possibilities of what happens in this one expansion draft, not to mention the multiple ones that are going to come. But so to be entering into that world of unknown and a trapdoor here, a secret window here, blah blah blah, and not have the leadership of a GM and or coach, to me shows, I'm not saying, hey, pull the trigger and get this done and you have 5 days, because that's not a good idea either. But to go into the fog of an expansion draft without a directive, without a direction for your franchise, to me tells me that you're going to be right back in this fog of unknowing and failure.
Well, and that's why the next couple of weeks are critical. They're huge, and we've been doing, just so everybody knows listening, we're going to be doing a top 25 college basketball poll, where Aryeh and I go on Bleacher Report, and we basically talk about the top 25 college basketball. Yes, I got Aryeh to talk about women's college basketball. It's a miracle within itself. I'm super proud of it. I'm super excited about it. But we're going to be doing that every Monday, and we've kind of basically decided after we do that show, we'll jump on here, whether it's every week, every other week, jump on here and just kind of talk about the happenings of the W. And it's very obvious now we're in the off season, but there's not going to be a shortage of stuff to talk about. We're going to have to analyze this league, and especially the next couple of weeks. Moves have to be made. Some of these people
Hmm.
have got to hire, like today, this week. So, even when we're back here a week from now and we're recording this show after our AP show, there's going to be more additions. And I think the Katie Smith one and the Claire move is shocking to me, because you're seeing people who have longevity, consistency in the WNBA that are jumping ship, or say what you want about Unrivaled. They've come into this thing aggressively with the funding, with the game plan. I don't know how it's going to look, but they are attracting top talent, experienced talent. They're getting people on board. And so is that pulling away from the WNBA? I think losing a Claire, is devastating to WNBA. She's someone that should be, she's primed and ready for that true GM role. And like I keep saying, there is a shortage of front office personnel, front office experience. There's a shortage of WNBA coaching experience. So they're going to have to start getting creative in terms of, okay, do we go the former player route? Do we go the NBA route, because those guys aren't seeing any growth in their NBA career, because the NBA is going former player route. So maybe they make a switch over to the women. Are they able to attract college coaches? That's a tough one. We could go through that debate all day long, and you guys know I do that on Twitter all day anyway. But it's going to be interesting, just how can the WNBA attract and retain quality coaches, GMs, front office personnel? That's the question mark right now. And you know what? That's growth. That is growth.
Hmm.
That's how the WNBA takes the next jump, is being able to offer more incentivized package in terms of consistency, stability, security. Just right now, it just kind of feels like the league is just fly by the seat of our pants, and let's just make decisions based on how the wind is blowing, and that's
Hmm.
not appealing to people.
No, and the thing that I would add too is, like, when you talk about those players, those coaches, those front office people who have longevity, who have been around, I'm going to say something, and this isn't a knock. Like, if you can cash out, right? Like, it's a gamble, to combining the things that you're saying, for us, more limited minds, right? Is like, the W is growing. They're starting to pay more. The W has never reached this peak. Women's basketball has not been at this peak. And, like, look, we can get into a whole thing. My belief that the WNBA is going to surpass the NBA in the next 5 years, and then it's going to kind of dip down. We're going to see kind of ebbs and flows, and it's going to be more of an equal thing. One year, one team, one league will be better. Whatever. We'll get into that at a different time. But as we see the W grow, as more money is being invested, when these teams are going to start to offer more, if you look at a Katie Smith, if you look at a Claire, if you look at some of these other people, former players, front office people, coaches, why shouldn't they cash out? Why shouldn't they, if they have an opportunity to now get a bigger paycheck in college with more longevity, with more security? If Claire, somebody who maybe wasn't getting enough attention and recognition in Minnesota,
That's
look at
exactly what that
executive
is.
of the year.
That's exactly what that was. And you know
Yep.
what? Good for her. Everybody saw that was she was slighted. She was absolutely slighted. Say what you want. We know Cheryl Reeve is didn't even put her name on the ballot. Put her name, put Cheryl Reeve on that ballot in terms of executive of the year. So of course Claire's feeling some type of way. We all felt like she was going to leave, and now I'm sure Unrivaled went to her with a pretty lucrative package and found a way to. That's what happens. And if you don't take care of the quality people, in this organization or within the league, that's what happens. And so I don't know. My eyes are on Minnesota right now. Not to completely change the subject. My eyes are on Minnesota right now because it's a lot of change to go through in your front office, and this is still even before we're dealing with the expansion draft, and who knows what can happen with Cheryl Reeve. I don't know. I think it's possible
Well,
that they're not done yet.
no, I completely agree. I'll just say, like, let's throw it out there, Rachel. Rachel and I putting our hat in the ring. If there's anybody in a position of power that wants to hire a tandem GM, I guarantee, and I've made this guarantee
This
before,
is
no one's taken me up on it. Guarantee WNBA championship, whatever team takes us within our first 5 seasons.
I want to make it very clear that I do not guarantee that and that I'm not talking that craziness, but that's fine.
No, I'm guaranteeing it. It's done.
I love
Because
your
here's the other
confidence.
thing. I'm planning with the expansions ahead. I'm thinking about the expansions. So Cheryl Reeve, hit us up. A variety of other teams who need a GM, hit us up. We got you covered. You'll get a ring within 5 years, and then if you want us to go, we'll go. But as long as we got that hardware to leave with.
You won't get a 5-year contract, so it doesn't matter. You're going to get a 2-year contract.
Exactly. So we need to make it halfway in 2 years. That's what we need to do. No, I'm totally with it. No, like, there's a lot more to discuss. We'll be back. We kind of view these off-season ones as just kind of, shoot the
Shoot the
blank.
shit.
Yeah, discuss. I'll let Rachel swear for me.
Yeah.
Discuss, like, what are the hot topics, are the news, the things that are the chatter. Obviously, soon we'll be getting into college basketball and kind of talking about, like, who surprised us, who was looking good as we're prepping for the draft, or even a few years down the road type draft. Um,
Well, and
Rachel, as we like to
obviously,
end.
no. Give me 1 second, because obviously we have next week. That'll be the day after the draft lottery. So that'll be a lot. Who ends up getting it? LA, Dallas, to be determined. Draft lottery on the 17th. And I know you're going to ask me who is my GOAT. I don't want to answer. I don't know. You can't ask me that in the off season. My brain's
Let's give
all
some
focused
love.
on
Let's
college
give some
basketball.
love to the rightful
My,
GM of the year, Claire. Give some love. And now the best GM in Unrivaled history. I mean, props to Claire. No,
unrivaled
that,
history, and it's 7 months of existence. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'm excited to see what happens there. Look, maybe I'm reading too much between the lines, but I'm sitting there and I'm going, huh. Nafis Collier is sitting there and going, huh. Maybe Claire was wronged a little bit. Maybe she wants to come over to Unrivaled.
Or that's a good point, right? I mean, I love the aggressive business moves, but clearly there's a relationship there between Afisa
Hmm.
Collier and Claire. Is it DeWillis? Willis?
Yeah, duels.
Um, so, clearly I think you can tell that Unrivaled has a lot of attraction going on right now. And you know what? She might have been at a point where she's ready to make a move. And so she's going to go make it with people that she believes and trusts in and going to help them build this thing up. I think it's really cool. I'm excited to follow the Unrivaled League this year. I mean, going to be fun to see what that product looks like. We'll talk about that as we get a little bit closer to the first of the year. Right now, let's focus on the draft lottery, the coaching movements, the absolute chaos that is ensuing in the WNBA right now, because, again, even a week from now, it's going to look completely different. So we will catch you next time.